Hello, everyone. Here we are for the Week 8 Power Rankings of Season 7. So, this is the final Power Rankings of the season. And let's just kind of get into last week. So, last week, for reference, if y'all don't remember, we had two matches that never occurred. And so, we're going to start with the Week 7 matches that didn't occur. So, beginning, we have the Bolton Bashers versus the Somerville Scissors, who is the new coach who was replacing the Georgia Gurchins. So, Miss Mag, any thoughts on the set?
Yes, I want to say that this was a good showing for the Somerville Scissors coach, Night Owl. They had to start their run in the VDL against the two-time champion. Goomer and the Bashers are no easy opponent. I believe this set came down to, I think they said a high horsepower, and this kind of was instrumental in determining the 2-1 over the either the 2-0 or the 2-1 in their favor. Um, I think Goomer himself said he got a little bit lucky, maybe some like quick claw procs or stuff like that. I don't actually remember just like seeing this match because it happened a little while ago, but I'd say it was a good showing. Like Goomer's not easy to even take one game off of him is very impressive.
Yeah, no, I know. Game one, Goomer once again try to go with the Cramorant. I think every time they brought in it thus far this season, it hasn't gone particularly well, and it was a pretty like standard set, which was like Surf, Scald, and then I think it had this spicy Endure, and that was kind of its main thing.
Hmm.
But and then they had oh my gosh, the dry skin Toxicroak, so that to pair it next to the Surf. But basically, it just didn't quite do enough, and the Scissors were kind of able to position well and get a little bit more offense game one, and were able to get the win. And then game two and game three, the Bashers kind of realized that Reggie Rock was very good into the team. Even the Pokemon that did good like good damage into the Reggie Rock, namely the Excadrill, on the Scissor side, took a lot of damage to body press on the Reggie Rock. And then
Yeah.
yeah, and then the Quick Claw was really big. I think it ended up getting a couple of Quick Claw rock slides that ended up being really relevant. And and I think he got a Quick Claw flinch in game two, if I recall correctly, which was really big. But overall, I think there was a high horsepower miss and or a Quick Claw activation that didn't occur. The Scissors might have actually got 2-0, but I think game three, the Bashers kind of had a pretty convincing win, though. Um, so,
I would
so
agree with that.
yeah. But yeah, so it's definitely interesting. Nothing was, I think, too spicy of sets. It was mainly the Articuno, the Excadrill, and the Tyranitar on the Scissor side, and then the you know Quick Claw, Reggie Rock, and the yeah, were kind of was kind of the big MVP of that one. Any other thoughts before we move on to the next one?
No, I think that'll do.
The next one is the Old English Ice Cubes versus the Tendo Melmetals. So this one was actually, I think, the last match that occurred. Actually, even though even though it was technically week seven, so it's one of the ones that most recent in my mindset. So in addition to it being pretty recent in the mindset, I actually helped Gert a lot with the team. Because they were on vacation, so actually, technically, I built the entire team. um,
Uh, Another collaboration between you and Gert. We start the season with one, and we end it with one too.
Yeah, and because Gert made playoffs, basically that means I made playoffs. So I'm gonna take my honorary playoff position because the team I drafted, or the basis of the team I drafted, made playoffs. So I'm gonna say I made playoffs too. But anyways, yeah, so the Melmetals kind of led and were very focused on their sand mode. They had both games. They brought baby hippopotamus and Dracozolt. It was choice banded Dracozolt, so it did huge damage output. Um, and I think game one, the Melmeadows brought Regigigas Wheezing, and then game two they brought um, the the grass Lurantis. And so basically, the Ice Cubes were able to get pretty good position. They led with Mr. Mime both games, got fake out support One of the games they led Mimikyu, and the Mimikyu's Will-O-Wisp on Regigigas in Dracozolt did massive, or like helped them greatly. And the Steelix being able to switch in for the Bolt Beaks and doing huge damage into the Pokemon ended up being very impactful and very good. The and that's kind of what ended up coming down to the set was just um, the Ice Cubes were able to disrupt the Melmetals with Will-O-Wisp taunts on the Mimikyus and fake outs with the Mr. Mime, and then the Melmetals were kind of focused to get most of their damage output from the Dracozolt, and Dracozolt kind of had to, because of Choice Band, it had to lock into something, and that in locking into stuff kind of ended up making it a little awkward in some end games.
Yeah, I want to say that I'm a fan of Gigas Weezing. I've enjoyed using it in previous seasons in regular VGC. It's a little disheartening to see it so underperform this season here in the VDL, but I mean, in some ways that might just speak to the weaknesses it might have in a non-Dynamax format. That being said, the Melmetal's Dracozolt nearly forced a game three. I believe it was in the end game of game two where it was just knocking stuff out like left and right, and I think it came down to it might have been a roll, it might have just been like not having enough damage on the board, but I distinctly remember the Dracozolt was in an endgame position where the Ice Goose had, I think, 1 or 2 mons left with maybe not so much HP, and it just was going for Bolt Beak after Bolt
Well,
Beak.
yeah. So
Um,
so so it was an end game that if it wasn't banded, I think they probably could have won, but
mhm.
it was choice banded into Boltbeak, and one of the last remaining Pokemon on the ICQ side was a Steelix, and so it looked really promising, and I agree. Like when I first saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, it looks like they might be able to force a game three, but then figured out that it was banded, so it was pretty much completely. There was an end position that was able to completely get them guaranteed.
Yeah, no, the Steelix was basically a checkmate at that point. But at the same token, I got to give the Ice Cubes credit because that game one of that same set, they played probably one of their best game ones I've seen all season,
Yeah,
honestly.
but yeah, it was definitely a fun set. And definitely I think it showed the strength of Dracozold as a Pokemon. It's a Pokemon that I definitely have throughout the season and historically been a little bit down on, but definitely it looked pretty good in that this set.
Yep, certainly did.
So continuing on, I guess we can go up to the first match of Week 8 proper, which was the Bulky Dragons versus Somerville Scissors. So starting off with both of the Scissors matches. Sadly for the Scissors, they ended up losing 2-0 or 0-2, whatever. They lost. And the Dragons won 2-0. So a little bit sad. They kind of had a pretty tough two opponents to when they joined the league. They had the reigning champion who was fighting for first seed, and a team that was kicked out of playoffs as they lost, and had a very good chance to make playoffs if they won. And so very tough opponents, and they ended up losing 2-0 to the Dragons. So any thoughts on this set?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think this is the only set of that week that wasn't recorded or anything. Like we didn't. I don't even think there was there a battle report. It was. I remember the Dragons, the coach of the Dragons, was on vacation. And he said he wasn't able to
Oh
record, so
yeah.
I think it was just like the one battle report. So I didn't actually. So none of us got to see this match. Yeah, it was just I believe they spoke about the Latias doing a good amount of work, and it seems like Pilot Swine picked up 3 KOs in game one. So I think they just couldn't navigate Pilot Swine, and the Latias and Arcanine seems to be the
Yeah.
problem for the Scissors.
Yeah, okay. I remember them talking a little bit. I think they definitely under respected Pilot Swine. I think that was one of the things they mentioned in chat. And they just didn't think it was going to come and it was going to be that big of a deal, and it came and did a lot of work in game 1 apparently.
Yeah, that's kind of funny because we started out the season with the Gurchins, who was the original coach and of this team. with Zam's team being like very high in the week zero power rankings, and everybody said, but it's weak to ground types. So in some ways, it's a fitting close for the chat. Palestine to put in so much work, even after all the changes.
That's fair. That's pretty funny. But that like ground is pretty good in the team, especially Palace Wine being yeah. It just deals huge damage into the Articuno, into both of their sand modes. It and overall, just it's a very good Pokemon in the general sense. But I guess we don't have too much to say since we didn't watch this because it wasn't recorded. But a very big win for the Dragons. Sadly, it wasn't enough to propel them to the playoffs. They just barely missed out in the playoffs, getting 4-4 plus 1 ending the season, where 4-4 plus 2 was needed to make playoffs.
Yeah, it was tough. If they had managed to take a game off me last week, they might have been there actually.
Yeah. Oh no. You had some major wins to finish off the season, and I guess with that we can go to the next match on our list, which is your match against the Pugging Porygons, which was an incredibly important match for the Porygons because if they beat you, they would have gotten first seed in their division. However, they ended up losing to you 2-0 and ended up losing the first seed in their division. So let's talk about your match.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like these last 2 weeks, because I've been out of playoff contention. Like these matches have no actual impact on me, but I look at them as good practice and just a way to finish the season strong. So for
Well,
this match,
well,
I
first
wanted.
thing before you continue, like you have had incredibly difficult opponents the last multiple weeks, and you've been playing so well. So I want to give you your props because, like, sometimes when you get into these situations, you might just get end off with some bad, like opponents that are also kind of don't have any reason to try to win. But you fought against teams that are fighting for playoff spots and have knocked them out of playoffs. You single-handedly knocked the Dragons out of playoffs. You
Yeah,
single-handedly
it's
knocked the Porygons into out of first seed in their division.
yeah, no, I know it, and it's like this was probably been one of my favorite matches all season actually, just because it was a good balance of I think taking a serious crack at this team and also getting to use some unused tech that I never really got to bring against other coaches. And the Porygons are in a very interesting matchup versus my team because the whole thing about their whole team all season is they have no mons faster than Urshifu, which is like base 97. So basically, their team is middle of the road to hard Trick Room centric. And I have a Regieleki, and I have a Hail mode, and I also have a somewhat decent Trick Room package at the bottom. I'm not out of contention. So, my thing is I go into this match thing and I got to face hard Trick Room with Bronzong, Dragalge, and like Shiinotic being basically Amoonguss light because of the spore. And I'm like, okay, how do I find a way to actually underspeed his team and outspeed it at the exact same time? So I had some very cool techs. I had Room Service Arctivish without Slush Rush. I had Iron Ball Quagsire with After You. And I think the first game was actually really close. If he did not click Stream Stop into my Quagsire in the end game of the first game, and he actually risked the Energy Ball, he probably would have beat me, and he would have forced the game 3 at some point because he was scared of the Rindo, and because he didn't actually EV the Shiinotic to have minimum speed, he couldn't tell that I wasn't unnaturally slower than him. It's kind of funny. It's like him messing up his EVs actually almost messed up my strategy because my strategy was so contingent on him doing his EVs right, and it also messed him up with his reads. It was like game 1 was just a really, really kind of back and forth kind of match. Uh, Game 2 was honestly just I just outlet him because I went immediately into my fast mode with my Regieleki on lead, and he had the Togekiss Blastoise, and he just kind of got out positioned after I tricked him a Choice Scarf on the Togepi, so it was just kind of sitting there doing nothing. And Regieleki just kept chipping down the team, and then Arctivision, Quagsire, and Mortigram just kind of picked it up, and that's the 2-0.
Oh yeah, no, I know game two that the Togetic I think was pretty much on the field the entire game, stuck with Choice Scarf, and it was such an awkward position, but it felt like it needed to be switched out. But the Porygons were in this awkward position where if you read the switch out and anything that they switched in got hit by a strong attack, they also kind of lose. So it was like in this lose-lose situation where they can't really switch out because it causes them the game. But Togetic being on the field doing virtually nothing also kind of loses them the game. And yeah, the trick on the Togekick did so much work. It just made them it feel like the Porygons were kind of playing a 2v1 the entire match.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta give him credit though. He got lucky because I didn't expect him to attack with the Togepi on the very first turn. I thought he would do either like I don't know, follow me shell smash like as a backup fast mode, or he would do like fake out and maybe like yawn. But he did fake out, so I didn't protect my Regieleki, thinking if he tries to switch out the Blastoise, I can get free damage. And if he goes for yawn, I had electric terrain on it manually just for that. Actually, really just for that. And he went with Tri Attack, and he got a freeze on me on the Regieleki the first round. I'm like, oh shoot, nah, I'm really screwed. But my Lucky was nice enough to thaw like immediately, so I gotta give him credit. It was a wacky set, but it's got to be one of my most fun sets I've had like all season for the amount of like cool things I was able to show off, like Frisk, Morgrim, and electric terrain. Even though I didn't click it on Aleki, but the Porygons got to where they are with a strong team and good play. I just had to knock them down a couple of seeds.
Only one seed, but yeah, no, it was definitely a fun set, and I think we kind of cover it. Unless there's anything else you want to say about it.
Nah, just I know I played a part in knocking Porygons down one seed and DJS out of playoffs, but you guys did it. You guys played good games, man. It was a really fun season.
Yeah, definitely agree. Continuing on, we have my match. Sadly for viewers, and this was ended up being a forfeit match. Drowsy Draconilts, were having some problems. They couldn't get to the match in time, and they also didn't have any way to get playoffs, and so they kind of just gave me the forfeit win. I was a little sad for me because week 7 I picked up Dragonite, and I love Dragonite. I wanted to get some more games with Dragonite, but sadly, I only get the 1 week with Dragonite because this week I got the match got canceled.
Yeah, it was. I was actually also looking forward to this match too, as I helped Masenko prep a team for him to beat versus using your squad. So I was hoping to see like that because I felt like it was going to be a really interesting match, especially like with the little Delibird pickup. Even if you didn't like bring it, but like just because you picked up the Delibird right there at the end of trades, and it's something that has to be respected now that you've added fake out to your team.
Oh yeah, no. I was gonna use a cool Dragonite set with extreme speed and Scyther were some of my big mons I was planning on using, but sadly it never will occur. But I guess with that we can continue on to the next match, which is the Alexandria Arcanines versus the Beantown Binicles. This was a huge match for the Arcanines because this was a win and in for playoffs, and pretty much a guaranteed lose, and they get kicked out of the playoffs, and they were able to get a 2-0 win. I'm going to start talking with some of the Binacle sets because they had some interesting sets. They had Choice Band Whimsicott with U-Turn Play Rough. I can't remember its other move. I think it was Telmond is one of the other moves. They had Protect, Last Resort. What's it called? The dog.
Scrappy Stoutland.
Yeah. Protect, Last Resort, Scrappy Stoutland. And they had another interesting set. I can't remember the other one.
I think they had Scarf Flapple with Outrage, but
yes, they did have Scarf Flapple with Outrage, which also was pretty
Scarf,
cool.
Yeah.
No, yeah. So they had some pretty cool sets. They definitely said that. I think they told me at some point that their team was a little bit memey, but it definitely had some interesting things. I think one of the big problems, or one of the big things that ended up happening was the Arcanines basically the Binicles clicked Protect a lot, and the Arcanines read every single Protect that occurred the entirety of the set, I think.
Yeah, Dan was pretty good reading those protects. I'll give him that for
Uh,
sure.
and so and so that definitely was a big deal. I think Dan not bringing NDD Mel and not having psychic terrain definitely was a little awkward because Dan had a lot of priority stuff, and the Binacles chose not to have any priority stuff because they didn't want to, you know, because they didn't want to get kind of destroyed by the psychic terrain. And so Dan had a lot of ability to, out prioritize. And I think they kind of just outsped a lot. I know they just kind of seem to always be attacking first. They always seem to be the offensive threat, and the Bidocles felt like they needed to do some nice protect reads or switches, and Dan pretty much either picked the optimal decision or made the read, and pretty much never got punished by a switch in or a protect. Any thoughts on the set?
I will definitely say that the Blacephalon pick that was only on Dan's team for like 2 weeks now is like in top 20 kills for the league because it basically went 8-0 this week. Like the Blacephalon kind of just went really ham into Theo's team, and it really put in a lot of good work with the spread moves and just with the shadow ball for the heat train, even because of flash fire, and coupled with the protect reads and just the fact that game one was, I would say, very passive from Theo because he was trying to position so much that he had to basically protect every other turn, and that's just literally letting Dan kind of dictate the pace of the match. But the clown was scary this week.
Well, yeah, if I recall properly, I think game one, the only damage that was dealt on our on to the Arkansas team was a U-turn from um, Whimsicott. I think that was the only damage dealt in the entirety of the game.
Which
To
is really unfortunate because it was choice banned and it didn't pick up because Dan happened to be running a bulky life art set that week.
Yeah, exactly. So it ended up being really sad because in theory, most weeks that would have actually one shot because of the choice band. It didn't one shot, and that was the only damage that was dealt. I think game one, and so it was definitely they definitely were in their back foot most of the game.
Yep.
Uh, I guess with that, we continue on to the rolled gold pretzels versus the Bolton Bashers. And this happened a long time ago. This happened over a week ago, if I recall. And so the Bashers were able to get 2-0, and with that win, they were able to get first seed in their division. You're gonna have to refresh me on what happened with this set. So, do you remember what happened?
All I can really remember, because I did watch it, but like you said, it happened like over a week ago, so memory's not fresh. All I do remember is this came down to, I guess, what you can say, a classic Pretzel's dilemma of like, do I bring Aegislash? If not, I win. If not, I lose. If I do, I win. And it seems to be that's what like a lot of Gumi's last couple of opponents have been like they respect the Aegislash in prep, and sometimes when he doesn't end up bringing it to the game, he's lost those games. I do remember Goomer was I think he asked the question on the video, is like, okay, well, if he had Aegislash in the back, well, then I just kind of lose. And then like Goomer has like freaking Spectre on his team, so yeah, Aegislash is a fairly good matchup into that mod. But I think it ended up being like a Clefairy in the back for like one of the games, and it was kind of like, oh well, I just foot on the gas. But yeah, outside of that, I don't really remember specifically what happened in the set. I'll be completely honest.
Well, yeah. So I remember that the I remember the Toros was pivoted a lot in game one, getting on intimidates, making the damage output on the Sharpedo not notably worse. I remember the Spectre kind of going off a little bit in game two, um, with, but yeah, I think I don't know. I'm trying to recall the set, but I'm drawing a little blank on it. I remember
Yeah,
Kramer. I know remember
it
Kramer at
was a
Crane.
long time ago.
Yeah, so like I remember Kramer at Crane, and I think it was an Amnesia Kramer, but ended up not doing much. Um, I remember. I think. Uh, yeah, I don't know. There, it was Yeah, not I don't have the most insight of this match because it was a long time ago. I just remember that there was a really funny thing where Goomer got a kill with Clefable and was like, in your face, Lucian.
I also remember that, trying to keep those kill counts up nice and high.
Yeah, I remember that was one of the things I remember about the video specifically, but I don't remember too much about the specific plays, but I do remember that it was definitely like a lot of pivoting and very very technical play done on Goomer's side, and I think that's pretty common for Goomer matches with the from the Bolton Bashers, our reigning champion.
Would definitely agree.
Uh, but I guess we can continue on to the next one, which was the Baltimore Pangorials versus the Tyranitar Sauces. So this was another big one, and I think the most notable thing I remember that I think the Sauces they caught the Sauces off guard was the offensive quiver dance Volcarona. That was something that the Sauces didn't seem to prepare for and did incredibly well into their team. If you look at some of the if you look at some of the Pokemon that the Sauces brought, like Cresselia, Crawdont, Venusaur, you can see how much damage that it looks like those Pokemon will do because Bug Buzz and I believe it was Flamethrower basically had the ability to almost one shot everything on that was brought except for Naganadel from the Sauces.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. No, that was a rough bring, and it was a very good bring into Sake's team. Like we've seen a lot of different sets from the Tyranitar sauces. We've seen the Cresselia going for the setup. We've even seen, I believe, there was a sub nasty plot Thunderous one week that I don't think it got too far off the ground, but like if you've preparing for this match, like, and you've seen, Saki bringing a fair amount of setup, like the Volcarona, even irrelevant of like the type advantages that it's providing for the Pangorials, like just to set up the Quiver Dance against a lot of Saki's team, which is specially based that he likes to bring those mons and was a very good prep piece. And then you have like the Rillaboom for like the more physical threats like the Crawdon and the Golurk because Grassy Glide is a little bit busted, but never mind that. It was unfortunate though because the first game, while it was a very good back and forth, it ended with I believe a heat wave miss from the Naganadel onto I think it missed the Rillaboom and then it got KO'd by high horsepower, and that lost them the game one after they fought really hard to try to get that positioning back.
mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I remember that was a big one. Another one that was really big was game 3, where the sauces are like kind of quick click Aqua Jet into Volcarona because it's a guaranteed one or kill from the range it was at, and then immediately said, "I really hope that Thievul doesn't have Quick Guard because if I have Quick Guard, I lose." And then the term happened. It had Quick Guard, blocked the it blocked the Aqua Jet, and that ended up pretty much causing them to lose the game 3.
Yeah, I remember that too, and I was staring at that Crawdon's moveset, and I'm just looking at it, like, why is Dragon Dance here? Why is it not Liquidation? You could have won the game. Or at least had a shot at getting back into it, because in the game 3, I feel like if you got rid of the Volcarona, you at least checkmated to some extent. I don't remember I think Rillaboom was still actually in the back, but yeah, the Thievul Quick Guard was a absolutely huge tech by the
Well, yeah. So I think the
Pangorials.
big one was if they could have killed the Volcarona, then Naganadel and Venusaur wouldn't have died, and those Pokemon could have then checked the Rillaboom in the back in theory. But yeah, it ended up basically coming down to that, and then the fact that Crota didn't have liquidation, and so kind of was just forced to click Aqua Jet in front of the Quick Guard, and that ended up making a really sad anticlimactic ending where you're just like, yeah, as long as the Pandas click the right moves, they win the game.
Yep. But
Even though it was like 3-3 at the time, and it's just like, yeah, the game's over.
that's Pokemon for you sometimes, man. It was kind of sad for him to just kind of speak it into existence, and then you see the hands go up. Up, it's quick guard. Oh, game's over, good kids. It's done.
But yeah, I don't know. So I think that's all about all I have to say about the set. Any other thoughts before we move on?
Honestly, despite the outcome of this match, because obviously if the Sauces won, I think they would have been like second seed or
Yeah.
something. You know, they still made playoffs, and both of these coaches played really well. It was definitely a great premiere for Week 8.
Mm-hmm. So with that, we can go into the next match, which was the Somerville Scraggies versus the Helisopod Warriors. So the Warriors needed to win a single game for this match to get their first seed. They were able to win 2-1, and so they clinched their first seed. So I guess I'll start with this. So the Warriors ended up having a kind of a couple of interesting sets. They had weakness policy Reuniclus. They had choice. Was it choice specs or choice scarf? Inteleon with Hydro Cannon.
Yeah, it was scarfed.
It was scarfed. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. And so I think game one, the Inteleon ended up going for Hydro Cannon into Cinderace, getting the kill on turn one. And from there, kind of led kind of down to a pretty convincing game one. Game two was a very strange decision on the Warriors side. They decided to U-turn into their own Reuniclus on turn one, and click Trick Room with Reuniclus in order to activate its weakness policy, get it in Trick Room, and then set up the Psychic Terrain with the Tapu Lele and the switch in. However, the Scraggies doubled up in the Reuniclus, killing it, and so pretty much the entire turn was wasted. The only difference was that they were down. The Warriors ended up being down one Mon and not having Trick Room up, and so it ended up putting them in a really bad position. And from that position, the Scraggies kind of were able to just take the win. And then game three, I think, was a lot more. Was a fairly impressive win from the Warriors, where Inteleon did massive chunks of damage, and I remember that I definitely like one thing. I think one of the awkward parts of the team was that Kabalion, I believe, was choice scarfed on the Scraggy side. However, it was slower than choice scarf Inteleon, and that ended up leading to a lot of awkward situations where they could just Hydro Cannon into the Kabalion and kill it before it moved, even though it was supposed to be faster than their team. So any thoughts on the match?
Was it actually a choice scarf? You know, I spent like the entirety of that set trying to figure out what that Covelion's item was.
It,
I couldn't tell.
so it had to be choiced. There's no question that it was not a choiced item, because there was some opportunities where switching to a different move made a lot of sense, and it didn't. And I'm pretty sure it did not do choice ban damage. So
Yeah. I kind of figured out it was choice, but I because like you said, the Inteleon was also scarfed. Like it seemed like a completely natural speed interaction to me.
yeah, no, that definitely happens.
Yeah, but I will say that I liked the spice that the Warriors brought this week. It didn't work for them, and they recognized it didn't work for them. So they adjusted back into game three, which they got their commanding win. But it was nice to also just see like the Scraggies with their sort of last final hurrah with some of their favorite or pop. I'm saying favorite, but some of their more common texts that we've seen from them. Like the Primarina was very nice, and I believe the end game of game two with the Shadow Ball tech was very nice with the Lele.
Yep.
The Scarf Cobalion, I think they've brought it like 3 times this season. So it was a good match to watch from both ends.
Well, yeah, and I remember game three. There was a nice play where the Warriors ended up reading a sucker punch from the Cinderace and switched in Tapu Lele to set up terrain. And if they didn't make that switch and the Sucker Punch killed the Inteleon, I think the Scraggies probably win that. And so definitely was a close match in that aspect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, 100%. I am actually really impressed with the work that Rex and the Warriors have done with the Inteleon this season. I had it last season in Searing Shot, and I don't think I nearly was as aggressive as Rex was when he's been using it this season. And
Well,
it's nice to be able to like see other coaches use mons that I've used in the past because I get to learn a lot more about different playstyles and how they can also be used.
well, yeah, they've just been loving that Hydra Cannon with it, and it's been doing a lot of work for them.
Like I would have never thought of Scarf Hydro Cannon. Like that's just insane amounts of speed and damage. Like and you potentially have the sniper boost or whatever. Like whew.
That
That poor Cinder has never stood a chance, man.
Yeah, even though I think at no point it was a fire type when was hit, but every time it got one shot. So, anyways, continuing on, we have the Brisbane Blazekins versus the Old English Ice Cubes. This was a big match for the Ice Cubes. They needed to win 2-0 to guarantee your playoff spots, and they were able to get the 2-0 win. So, what are your thoughts on the set?
I'm sad M had to end the season 08. I'm really sad. I was really hoping that, that the Blazers would pick up at least a couple of wins in the last I guess half of the season. But it was, it was definitely, I think, a close match. I believe there was like a freeze or two that didn't matter against the Blazekins. It's kind of the story of a lot of their season so far. But overall, I would say like the Ice Cubes definitely played a solid game. I think positioning, which is a strong suit of theirs, was very key against this team.
Well, yeah, I remember game two. There was an interesting play. I can't remember what turn it was, but I remember uh, the um, the Blazekins predicted a meteor mash into the Mammothwine spot, and so they switched in the Buzzwole to take it, which would take a meteor mash very well from the Lucario. However, Lucario then revealed it was special and it was a flash cannon instead of a meteor mash. And Buzzwole's special defense is not particularly good, and it ended up taking, I think, roughly 50%, maybe a little bit less or a little bit more, and basically made the Buzzwole end up not being particularly good for the rest of the game because it had so low HP and was slower.
Right.
I remember that was a really, really, really sad one at some point. I remember the But yeah, overall, I definitely I remember the freeze from Mr. Mine. I think just the fake out support of Mr. Mine was pretty annoying game one. I remember that the Lucario did a lot of damage into the Buzzwole, threatened a lot in pretty much everything. The special Lucario, because Flash Cannon for the Togekiss, it had Meteor Mash and or not Meteor Flash Cannon, for the Mammothwine and I think it ended up having maybe Dark Pulse for the Mesprit. But it's definitely one that another one of those games where I feel like the game one I think actually ended up coming down to like a slight misplay on the Blazekins. The Blazekins had Buzzwole at +1 or +2 attack from Beast Boosts. I think it was at +2 actually, and it went for an Ice Punch into the Mimikyu. But the Mimikyu was at +1 defense, and it didn't get the kill. And however, Electric Terrain was up, and Buzzwole had a Thunder Punch. And if it clicked Thunder Punch, the difference from the Electric Terrain boost would have killed the Mimikyu, and the Mimikyu was the last Pokemon surviving in game one.
Ah, yes, I do remember that the Thunder Punch versus the Ice Punch sort of. Yeah, I do remember that. I could have taken free advantage of the terrain since it was grounded,
Yeah,
but
and so it was really sad because I think that was the difference between the win and loss game one, because game one was incredibly close. It came down to, like I said, the Mimikyu versus Buzzwole in game. The Mimikyu took a Ice Punch, survived because the Mimikyu was cool, bulk up set. And then
I like that set actually.
yeah, and so it was able to bulk up and then was able to finish off the Buzzwole after taking the Ice Punch, which I think Buzzwole was at +2 or maybe even +3 attack at that time. And so it's definitely surprising because Mimikyu is not known for being the bulkiest Pokemon.
Yeah, but it was unfortunate. But I think overall, like they've been a strong coach in the VDL definitely in the past. This was a rough season for them, but I definitely believe the Blazekins can come back
Yeah.
stronger.
Well, we will see. But with that, we can continue on to the next match, which was Rebellion versus the K-Merge Camerups. This was a big match for the K-Merge Camerups. They needed to win. They needed to do pretty well in order to possibly get a chance to get first seed. They ended up losing 2-1 to Rebellion. I guess, what are your thoughts on this set?
This is probably got to be one of the closest games of Pokemon I've seen in a long time. Like, I believe the game three actually came down to a 0-0 because the last mon on Lucian's team literally died to Life Orb chip. So it was definitely a very back and forth kind of set, and I enjoyed watching this one. I think the camera ups had a lot of good tech. Lucian has the three dogs. It's a lot of bulky stuff that you may not necessarily know what he's planning to do with it. And if you've been following his season so far, you know that sheer cold on Suicune is not maybe something you want to deal with so much. You have the Magnezone for the sturdy, but like that only goes so far. So I noticed they had a Gothorita set with Torment and Shadow Tag and a whole bunch of support moves, and I think maybe Fake Out. And I remember asking Squirrely at the end of the match, was like, "Oh, the Torment is probably for sheer cold," but I was just like, "Nah, I couldn't have just been for that." And he was like, "Yeah, no, just it was literally to stop him from spamming sheer cold." And I was really saying, I was like, I wish you had an offensive move on your Gothorita because there were some points in game two where I think if it had some level of damage, it could have just done a lot of chip next to, I think Chandelure was out on the field, or maybe might honestly even been right on, but one of the other mods were on the field. Like it just needed like a little bit more chip to kind of possibly pull out a 2-0. But
Mhm.
since it didn't have any offensive moves other than Fake Out, it was literally just kind of stuck there. Like, yeah, helping hand, but while it's just helping the partner, Lucian's just doubling the partner. So you're not really you're like kind of on the back foot continuously because you're only outputting damage with one mon while he's doing it with two.
Mhm. I would definitely agree. I remember there were some cool sets. I remember the Calm Mind Drampa with Berserk, and how did it get healing? I know it healed at some point too. Which maybe it was just a berry, but I know that did a lot of work in all the games. Like Squirrely, the coach of the Cambridge Cameraets, has definitely been very trick room oriented this season, and this all three of the games definitely came down to them trying to set up Trick Room in order to get sweep with the Araquanid and the Drampa, and it was very successful most of the games. But like we said, the game three kind of basically came down to a damage roll difference between the Raikou surviving and dying earlier. Or technically one more turn of hell would have also done it because it almost died to hell chip. Um,
Yep.
but yeah, the game was incredibly close. It was a lot of back and forth, um, and yeah, it's definitely a fun set with just Raikou, Suicune doing work like they've been doing the entire season, and you know, and the camera ups kind of doing their main strategy they've done, which is setting up Trick Room and sweep and trying to sweep with Arachnid, which was very good. In addition, complemented by Drampa, which was a fairly new pickup.
Oh yeah, I definitely want to shout them out. I think the Drampa for the Como, which I'm not even sure if it's seen too much action this season, the Drampa was definitely a solid pick. Just giving them another nice piece to go with their trick room mode, like you said. But what I really like about it more is that it offers a second Berserk option so that the Moltres does not necessarily have to always come if you want to go that bulky Berserk kind of route.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe Drampa gets Roost, if I'm not mistaken. So like you kind of even have a better end game in some ways than the Moltres does. I'm not sure. Galarian Moltres gets Roost.
I know
But
Galarian Moltres doesn't. I don't know if Drampa does or not, but I know Galarian Moltres does not.
yeah, so I did want to shout them out for that pickup because I think it was it's very nice pickup going into playoffs.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully it does some work for them this next week. So continuing on, we have the MK Mimikyus versus the Trixie Tricos. So the Tricos were able to get a 2-0 win. So any thoughts on the set?
Man, I have quite a few thoughts on this set, but I gotta say the first game there was just so much good pivoting back and forth trying to reposition by both coaches, and it felt like a real, like literally watching a game of chess, which is what Pokemon kind of can be sometimes. And it was really good to just see, like, Otto's making a switch, then Yasha's making a switch to get back in position. There's Intimidates flying around, Feeney's trying to sit here and boost up, and Charizard's trying to dodge Rock Slide. So I just wanted to say, like, even though like it is a 2-0, I think the game one was very close, and a lot of times it just comes down to a few decision trees that may or may not have affected the outcome on one coach's part. Game two, I would say the Tricos dominated just a bit more, but at the same time, it did still come down to, I think, a 2v1. I think it was Zard and Feeney versus like a speed boosted Blaziken, and I think it just boiled down to like some Rock Slide flinches and chip uh, to pick up, but didn't quite get there. Couldn't hard for Blaziken to beat our Iron Defense Calm Mind boosted Feeney, if I'm
Yeah.
recalling
Oh
correctly.
yeah. So that's one of the things I wanted to mention. Yeah. So Otto's definitely been liking the Iron Defense Calm Mind Tapu Fini set this season, and it was very impressive this week. Getting up that after getting up the Iron Defense, Blaziken was struggling to do damage to it, and in addition, it was doing very good chunks of damage into it as well. I know game two, Otto made a pretty risky decision at some point to I think it was deciding to leave Charizard in and let it die when they kind of had a more consistent win by switching out. Um, and it definitely gave them an out to victory, but I think in the end game, not only did you need flinches with Rock Slide, you also needed crits and flinches because of how little damage it was doing after the Iron Defense boosts.
Right. Yeah. No. I've had Feeney in a previous league, and I've used that set like once or twice. It is so, and this was a DMAX league I had it in, which was a little bit less effective. But in non DMAX, where like you're not having those huge hits coming out, yeah, that Iron Defense Calm Mind set is just so crazy once it's positioned correctly. And I think and it's funny because I believe the Feeney only had Moonblast, and the Mimikyu's only resist, well, one of the only resists to Fairy is Steel, and you don't want to really bring Steel into a Sun team. So it kind of just worked in Otto's favor a lot of ways to have that set going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I recall that at some point game two they were trying to set up Trick Room the Mimikyus, and I think the Hatterene got one shot by I can't even remember what it was. Probably Charizard if I was to guess. In the sun, and it definitely kind of hurt their game plan of game two. So any other thoughts about the set before we move on?
I just think it was overall like it was a close game one. Good showing from Yasha and the Mimikyus, but sometimes Feeney just finishes.
Yeah, that's fair. Continuing on, we have the Welsh Wailords versus the Coffee and Smokers. This was another forfeit match, so this didn't actually occur. They were unable to schedule, and the match didn't seem to be super impactful. They kind of just gave it a forfeit, and so with that, the Wailords were able to lock up their second seed in their division. Um, yeah, I guess we'll continue on to the last match, which is the SARS versus the Tindo Med Metals. This was a close 2-1 match in favor of the SARS. Any thoughts about the set?
This was an absolutely insane set. Like I've never seen so much stall, like ever. It's just it just was nuts between the Toxapex with the the stockpile and the toxic and recover, and then the Celesteela with the leech seed and the Jellicent. Like it was in this game. Thankfully, this was played on Showdown. I as much as I hate to say it, like it would have been more painful to see this played out on cart because like I believe one of the games lasted like almost 60 something
Well,
turns.
yeah. So before we continue, that's one thing that's noteworthy is that if this was played on cart, this would have definitely gone to timer. But because it was played on Showdown and they had no timer on their Showdown match. Game 3, I believe, when it ended up going like 60 turns, literally, not figuratively, actually 60 turns.
Yeah, it was, but I have to say it was definitely it was a good showing by both coaches. I think the Melmotos ended up winning the first game. I think just um the Soras didn't do like they misplayed. I think they didn't do a protect or something that they probably should have, and that allowed forgot what it was. Man, it might have actually been Dragonzolt, but I could be wrong. It allowed one of the Melmetal's Pokemon to basically land a finishing KO, and then game two, the opposite situation happened where it was like the Melmetal's missed a KO, I believe, on the Meowstic, and the Sora's Meowstic was able to KO the last remaining Pokemon. And then we have the 60 turn game three.
Well, yeah. So for everyone who didn't watch it, so what happened was it was skill swap. Meowstic was skill swapped its prankster onto Toxapex. Toxapex had then priority recover, priority toxic, infestation, and I don't know what his last move was.
Oh, that was the other. It was right. It was the priority toxic that can't miss because Toxapex is a poison type now, coupled with priority recover and stockpile and infestation.
Oh,
That was
stockpile was the last move. I forgot.
yeah.
Yeah, and so what ended up coming down to this weird end game where the Celesteela that was brought on the Melmetals was also a bulky leech seed set. However, it ended up being this weird situation where at some point they leech seed did with the Celesteela and switched it out and then brought it back in. And so the leech seed was locked in on the second spot, their second position on the field instead of the first position on the field. And so Celesteela couldn't leech seed again. And so that's the only reason they lost. Because if they had leech seed locked on the Toxapex, the Toxapex would actually died because of the leech seed damage would have healed up the Celesteela, and Celesteela will never have lost enough HP from the infestation damage.
Yes, I do. Now that you bring that up, I do remember that was a little one of those quirky mechanics where like the Jellicent ended up being the new recipient of the leech seed due to the switch, but then when it dies, the leech seed doesn't just get magically transferred over to whatever is left.
Well, not it's not even that it doesn't get transferred over; it doesn't disappear because if it disappeared, they could just leech seed later. But because they're that seed that spot the Toxapex already has leech seed on it and it's locked in on position 2 on the metal side, it it couldn't leech seed,
Right.
which was massive. Because I'm pretty sure Celesteela actually won that end game if they
Oh,
had leech if
100%.
they had the leech seed because they couldn't toxic it, and eventually the recover PP would have gone, and the leech seed and leftovers on the Celesteela would have never have gone away.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think when I spoke to Kirky afterwards, he said like he was expecting it to just be a passive effect on the field. He didn't actually realize it was locked into that slot. So,
Well,
but
yeah,
live and
it's
learn.
one of those things that I don't think many people know that. Well, I think the big one is not even passive on the field, but most people wouldn't have expected when that spot dies. There's no Pokemon to replace it. That you can't really cheat after that. You know, I think that's the big one that most people wouldn't realize. And so, but yeah, it ended up being this really like weird technical end game where, yeah, it's like if they leached it at a different time or didn't switch, they might have been able to get there. But it ended up being this absurd 60 turn game that Celestial just slowly got whittled down over like, you know, yeah, like 30 turns.
Yeah, but it's a good way to end week 8, right?
I don't know of a good way, but it's it's a unique way because I think that's the first match that kind of did that. Because well, again, we've had a couple of games that ended on timer, but that's the first one that should have ended on timer that didn't.
Yeah, nah, it's just listen. There's a reason why Crizzle being Crizzle. Sorry, there's a reason why being Crizzled has been a thing for like weeks now. These are good examples of it.
Yeah. Well, with that, that's the end of the regular season. And here is our final power rankings of the VDL season 8. We're not doing the entire thing. This is kind of just the list. Some of the noteworthy ones that we can see is that our top 2 are the Pangorials and the Bolton Bashers, followed by Rebellion and the Holisipod Warriors. I think some noteworthy ones that I think are worth pointing out. I think that the Smokers and the Drake results at 22nd, 23rd. One of the big reasons I think they're as low as they are is because they didn't play their Week 8 match, and I think so people didn't really rank them that high. We got Miss Mag getting the highest 3-5 ranked team after having a pretty slow start of the season, which I think is pretty impressive. I don't agree with my position at 13. I definitely think I should have been 14th, maybe even 15th, and you should have been 14th. But I definitely think the Dragons should have been ahead of me. Let's see. Any thoughts on any of these positions, or any people you want to shout out for having a good season, or any other things?
Yeah, I'll do a few shout outs. I do want to say that this is kind of a dual shout out to Porygons and Cambridge. Frey and Squirrely started out like literally near the bottom in week 0 power rankings, and to see them both
And week
qualify
1.
and week 1, and to right because they both lost their first week. And they were also both defeated in week 8. Man, they've just had parallel seasons this whole time. I just realized, yeah, they both took. Oh no, I forgot. Squirrely actually lost the week before that, but nevertheless, I am very impressed by them sort of playing such a strong season, even from like that early defeat, and both made it to playoffs. So that's definitely gonna be one of my first shout outs. That was a very impressive run. Shout out to Panda for literally just keeping it consistent. Like his only loss this season was literally to Lucian, and it was I think over a freeze. So yeah, he would have actually been 8-0. It's crazy to think about it, but it's true. Um, and just like the general the general Sapphire division, like you guys did not make it easy at all, no matter where you're placed on this list, and you guys gave me a good run for my money, so I had a great season. So, yeah,
Yeah.
congrats to everybody that made playoffs.
Oh yeah. So for reference, anyone who doesn't know, this was not intentional. This didn't have to be the case. However, every team that is 12 and above is currently in playoffs. Every time below 12 is not in playoffs. In theory, we didn't rank necessarily like that. It's just kind of the teams that we thought did the best and that are the most promising. But yeah, so that's for reference. Another shout out that I would like to say is that our VDLS coaches were very impressive this season. So we have a 4th ranked team, the 6th ranked team, and the 15th ranked team are our 3 coaches from the VDLS, and those are some pretty impressive positions, especially because of how like difficult it is kind of just to start in this league from my personal experience and from other coaches I've seen that just joined for the first time.
Yeah, no, I gotta also agree with that. I think I still laugh at remembering how Rex like changed his team so much in Grace, but I really think it's solid now, and I think he's gonna do some good work. And who knows, he might be coming for the crown in V, trying to
Well,
get
yeah.
back to back.
Oh yeah, no, definitely so. I guess here we are. This is our final rankings for everyone. However, we are not done with our video. We are going to continue on to the playoff matches. So here are the wild card playoff rounds. So these are the 8 coaches that are playing in the first round of playoffs. These are all the second seeds, which are in the top 4, and the bottom 4 are all the wild cards. And these are also the matches that are occurring. If you do vertically, the Wellords versus the Sauces, the Arcanines versus the Tricos, the Cambridge Camerats versus the SARS, and the Porygons versus the Ice Cues. And then the remaining 4 teams are these, which are the first seeds that get a bye and get to skip the first round of playoffs and can go to the second round of playoffs. So congratulations to the first seed, and we're gonna go a little bit over the specific matches for for the first round of the playoffs. First one we can go for is the second seed of, oh my gosh, whatever this division is, the Welsh Warlords versus the Tyranitar Zasas. Any thoughts on this matchup or anything you think will be interesting or exciting about it?
I'm looking forward to this matchup. I think these two actually faced off in the regular season, so rematches are always interesting in that dynamic because usually the winning coach has to find a secondary strategy to beat the loser, and the loser is not necessarily motivated to do much except find a new strategy or rebuff the old one that they could not execute for whatever reason. So I don't remember who actually won in their set if they faced in the regular season. So I just think that dynamic adds
Right.
some intrigue.
So I'm gonna okay. So for reference, they did not play each other.
They didn't. I could have sworn they did.
No.
I'm totally mistaken then.
Okay, so anyways, so some things I think is interesting in the match. So Thundurus is a very powerful Pokemon, both as a Prankstermon and a Defiantmon in this matchup, which is going to be very interesting to see which choice the SARs decide to use with it, because Prankster weather control to deal with the Hell seems pretty useful. Prankster Thunder Wave and Eerie Impulses seem good. However, Incineroar is likely going to come and is likely going to be Intimidate. So Defiant Thundurus also seems like it could be very powerful in order to deal with that. And so that's one of the interesting things I think in the matchup that will, will definitely affect it greatly. Other than that, I think the big one is that, um, you know, both of them have justification to lean Trick Room, and both of them have justification to lean not Trick Room. And so it's definitely going to be an interesting of who tries to do Trick Room, if either, and who tries to, and how are each of these teams are going to do speed control. Another thing is that the Wellords have frequently been using Icy Wind as speed control, which also makes Thundurus possibly being Defiant being a very scary Pokemon in as well. Those are kind of just some of the thoughts. Like there's some, pretty scary Pokemon on each side. Like the Scizor looks really good into the ice mode, but the ice mode looks really good into like, the Venusaur, Naganadel, Thundurus type Pokemon, and things like that. Any thoughts on the match?
All right. Well, now that I've cleared up the the mistake of the scheduling, I will say that in terms of the matchup, I think one of the most interesting things I'm seeing is the carving actually looks like it could put in a good amount of work here for the based on how you like perceive this match. Like the carving can do a lot of work, and we were just talking about the team leaning a little bit more on the trick room mode because I'm not so sure you bring the Cresselia here versus this team. Like you have two dark types and a very bulky psychic type amongst the Heracross, which is also very fast and probably does not. In Cresselia probably doesn't enjoy taking a stab Megahorn, especially with like guts boosted. So Carving might actually have a reason to shine here. Whalers might not bring the Corviknight if they're really scared of Thundurus and Torracat, and it's just a good mind game across the board, honestly.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree with that. I guess with that, we can move on to the next match, which would be the Alexandria Arcanines versus the Trixie Tricos. Um, so, any thoughts on this matchup? Just at first glance?
At first glance, Blacephalon facing a Sun team seems very amusing, honestly. I'll be very curious to see how well the Arcanines maybe use that to their advantage. Conversely, I also think Shiftry looks very good into a lot of Dan's teams since a lot of those heavy hitters do not really care for dark moves at all. I wouldn't say that either one of them have really. I mean, it's such a well balanced in the speed tiers. Like aside from the chlorophyll boosting things, like Dragonfolt's faster than the Jolteon, and the Lycanroc is faster than the Blacephalon, but the Life Part not assuming Prankster, but faster than Charizard. But even at the slow end, like Dan has like that slow Fungus, so maybe we'll see some more work out of some of those lesser used picks by Dan. Maybe like the Lickitung it hasn't actually come to any games, so maybe this is a week for it. Who knows?
Well, yeah, one thing that I think is going to be very interesting is the terrain war and the weather war that is bound to occur between these two matches. The Tapu Fini setting up misty terrain in order to allow for prankster or priority moves, and the Indeedee to try to prevent priority moves. Sableye, if Psychic Terrain isn't up, seems very good into Dan's team, both because they are weak to Dark and on average. In addition, just Encore, Quash on Sableye just being generally annoying. Whereas the Arcanines have some faster Mons, namely with the support Mons, that they likely want the Psychic Terrain. And then similarly, the Tricos probably want the sun up specifically for Shiftry having chlorophyll, but Lipard can have Prankster Rainy Day, which can prevent that. And so I definitely think that's one of the more interesting parts of the matchup. And I love those type of matches that are very terrain and weather focused. I think they're very interesting and amusing. So I'm really expecting this to be a fun match to watch.
On that same token, though, you since you brought that up, I think there's also the uh, aside from just the weather and the terrain, there's also like a little unburdened going on here because of the Liepard and the Drifloom. It is very reasonable to potentially run unburdened Liepard with a Psychic or a Misty Seed, probably a Psychic, just to guarantee you could get it off, so that you can act on Psychic terrain. And Sableye is kind of stuck doing nothing
Yeah.
because it's very slow if it's not using Prankster, and its other abilities are not great, to put it bluntly. So I think this is probably like one of the more even matches, like just looking at the matchup. Speed tiers line up a lot of the same pieces on each coach's team. It's really going to come down to play and prep, things we love to see.
Yeah. Definitely excited to see this one. This is definitely my match that I'm most excited to watch this playoff or this week in playoffs. Continuing on, we have the Cambridge Camerups versus the South Croydon SARS. So any thoughts about this at first glance?
I would say it's definitely a very interesting matchup because when you think about what the camera ups have been doing for most of the season, which is like setting Trick Room, and then you look at the source having the Toxapex and the Amoonguss for said Trick Room, it's like, do you really want to go that route? I mean, the Drampa can like have checks against the Amoonguss so that it's not super like useful against it with like spore spam or anything, but the Toxapex can actually present real problems to like the Araquanid, to the Rhydon if it should have water coverage. And at the same time, you're not really wanting to necessarily bring Magnezone into potential sand mode. So it's very like interesting perspective. And then that doesn't even cover the faster threats on Crizzle's team and the Prankstermon as well.
Well, yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that the camera ups are going to need to adjust their style that they've been playing very frequently a lot more than the SARS are going to need. I think the SARS can play very normal to their play style they've been playing this season, um, and so I think that might give them a slight edge because they just being bulky, just being grindy, being annoying on your opponent's team seems very good into the camera ups. Where the camera ups trick room package, like you mentioned, doesn't seem great. It seems not terrible, but it seems medium at best. And I definitely think that the camera ups are gonna need to adjust greatly from their strategies they've been running mainly this season to be able to get this.
I will also say that I think one of the things I'm excited to see in this match is particularly the interaction between Gothorita with the Shadow Tag, because the Soras love to switch to reposition to continue that grind fest, and the Gothorita is denying that. And since they do not have any Ghost type mons that I'm aware of, no, they have none, that actually might put a bit of a crimp in how they are playing that grindy, bulky style if they can't switch as much. It might have to force them just to run more pivot moves, but that might be something that they choose not to do.
Well, fun
They also,
fact,
oh,
fun
sorry, go ahead.
fact, skill swap Meowstick.
Skill swap Meowstic. I mean, that is a good point. It would be really funny if something happened where the Willie Meowstic couldn't do skill swap anymore.
Well,
I'm not sure what that funny thing would be, but it would be funny if it couldn't just magically do skill swap.
well, yeah, but so then just get rid of the shadow tag and force them to be stuck in.
This is gonna be a fun one to watch. And then you
Oh,
have that like the type null just sitting there, like that he's never used because he just picked it up, and like that just factoring into this bulky grindy mindset is just crazy.
oh yeah. No, like I said, I definitely think that this match is going to be a match that's felt like a Crizzle match this season, and so just on that, I feel like I'm leaning Crizzle, but obviously Cameras have played very well this season, so I'm definitely excited to see what they do to kind of overcome those that style.
Yeah, I think this is the match I'm actually excited for. You were excited for the last one. I think this is the one I'm excited for, and I got team Squirrely, man. Squirrely knocked me out of playoffs. I got team Squirrely.
So with that, I guess we can go to the final match, which is the Pogging Porygons versus the Old English Ice Cubes. Um, I guess I can start. So this one is definitely an interesting matchup. It's kind of another one where the Porygons have been very trick room focused, and Steelix looks very good into the trick room mode that the Porygons have been leaning towards, namely the Dragalgi. Trichology, whatever. And so it's definitely one of those weird games of maybe. So then the Porygons maybe need to lean more into their fast mode, and however the Ice Cubes have a better fast mode, or maybe a faster fast mode is probably a better way to say it. A faster fast mode. And so it's definitely kind of going to be, in my opinion, focused on speed control and being able to position the right mons, because every mon on, like, there's no mon that I think seems commanding on either team. I think the Urshifu single strike seems very powerful into the Ice Cubes team. However, in the same sense, they have Pokemon like Tapu Koko that can outspeed and one shot. And so it's definitely this going to be a very interesting match based on basically figuring out who's going to be focused on, or who's going to be able to outspeed whom. Any thoughts on it?
Yes, I agree with a lot of what you said. I don't think any particular team in this matchup has like one mon or even a pair that I think would run away with it. And of course, if you've played Frey and the Porygons all season, you've had the fun opportunity of playing the rousing game of Where's the Choice Scarf, because based on their speed tiers, like you said, the Tapu Koko can outspeed and absolutely destroy the Urshifu. But the Urshifu could theoretically be scarfed. The Silvally could, well, that was probably a little less likely to be scarfed. The Moltres could theoretically be scarfed. So I think it's like, is this interesting mind game of how the Porygons choose to both respect the fast mode that is a little bit more apparent, I would say, from the Ice Cubes, while also preserving that strength in their Trick Room mode that they have leaned on so much and has done quite well for them. Outside of obviously, like you said, Steelix does not really care to deal with Shonotic at the very least, but because it's part fairy, like it gets that nice benefit of being able to hit it for super effective.
Well, yeah, and then the
Um,
electric terrain on Tapu Koko also helps make Shiinotic a little bit less impressive as well.
yes, that's true in terms of the spore output. Although it's interesting because in a lot of ways, I believe the Porygons have been actually running it pretty offensively in the last couple of weeks. So I'll be curious to see if they decide to keep that up, because offensive grass and fairy is actually not the worst into Gert's team,
Well,
like
yeah,
at all.
no, Gert definitely has a weakness to fairies, and that's definitely one of their weaknesses this entire season, even before they made their trades. But we shall see if if who gets this one, because definitely this one definitely I think is the one that I think I personally have the least leaning on who I think has the favor. Yeah.
I would agree with you. I think this is probably the closest to being like a true 50-50. Like it's just going to really come down to, how each coach preps, how each coach actually plays the match. And I mean, I'll throw out a hot take because I think this is the last playoff match. I think the Silvally actually could be really useful here if it's prepped well and positioned well. I think that it can be a good tool for the Porygons, and we haven't seen too much of it all season. It's come to a few games, but I think maybe that might be the key.
Well, we heard it here. Maybe Savali is the best as top 10 draft mon. So anyways, so with that, this is the end of our power rankings. I hope you all enjoyed. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and good luck for anyone who's still playing.